can either crawl inside yourself and go into a shell and complain and whine and feel like a victim and say, oh, life is so much against me. Or you can embrace that and you can use the pressure and resistance to develop yourself inwardly. So I talk in this chapter about people like Nelson Mandela, who's thrown into a prison in South Africa, some of the worst conditions you can imagine, right? And he uses that experience. It took him years of a lot of work, but he used that experience to kind of find a way to not let it affect him and not let him dominate him and control him. And he developed kind of an inner freedom. And he developed out of that experience this message of love and forgiveness. He could forgive even his oppressors, right? So instead of using that moment to feel all defensive and feeling like you're a victim, that the world is against you, to go out into the world, to go outward instead of inward and project something positive. And that's what pressure and that's what pain and suffering should be like. I say in this chapter, it's going to be hard for me to understand because it's an elaborate idea, but pain and suffering are actually sacred. They're actually a blessing in disguise because they take you out of your normal day-to-day routines and they show you what life is really like. Life is harsh. It's difficult. There's death is waiting you, but you're living in this kind of floating world where you're completely, outside of that. You think everything's just fine. But when you're suffering, you're directly confronting the reality of life, right? The fact that all animals, all living things have to go through this, it kind of connects you to the suffering of all creatures. And it's a sacred experience because it's lifting you out of your life and it's giving you the possibility to transform yourself psychologically, intellectually, and spiritually. Does that make any sense to you?
Makes a lot of sense. You reminded me of a country that I always get wrong, so I'm not going to mention the country, but it's somewhere in Asia, and they claim that they're one of the happiest people because they get reminded of death around 5 times a day. And people might think that's weird or eerie, but I understand it's similar to what you said. Reminding oneself of death makes you enjoy and savor moments and appreciate things way more. Like you said, you're on your bike and you see a tree you've always seen, but when you know that it's finite time on earth, you're like, I really love this tree. So I understand why they might be the happiest.
I actually have a tree that I literally do that with.
Okay.
Every time I take my ride, I stop and I just watch that tree and I watch the light playing off of it. And I'm actually literally in love with that tree. But after I had my stroke, and as I said, I was driving my car right near here when I had it. And my wife forced me to get off the road and because I was about to get in some horrible accident. And she called the ambulance and I went into a coma. If it had been 1 minute later, I'd either be brain dead or I'd be completely dead, right? So I emerged from that and I come home and it's gotten a little bit less sharp than it was originally. But now I look out the window and I see things and I go, I might not be seeing this right now. And it just has a different intensity to it. When you know that your time is short, when you know that everything is impermanent, it makes you appreciate the people around you, it makes you appreciate the life that you have. So,
I was, speaking to my therapist about this point, and I think there is a split on how a person can benefit from such circumstances. I don't want to call it a near-death experience, but recently we had a near huge accident experience where my car caught fire, but it was minutes before I got into it, so a lot of people, and then I was talking to my therapist about it and he said, Anas, have you sat down and realized how fortunate, because you were supposed to be in that car. If I tell you how things panned out, I was fortunate that I was in a shoot like this, it just got delayed. So it delayed me from getting...
When your car just exploded?
Not like the movies, but it literally caught fire while it was parked. My driver was waiting for me, so he literally stepped out to get a coffee or something to eat. and it just went to smoke and then boof, like it was on fire.
Exploded?
Not exploded, because cars, that's quite a myth. It usually doesn't, but it caught fire that is very strong. So now, of course, if you're in the car, you can get locked in if it's an electric button car, and then you're screwed. Or if you're driving on the highway and it catches fire, you could get in a very bad accident.
Sure.
So me and the doctor were talking, and he said, Anas, have you comprehended the situation? I'm like, yeah, but I'm kidding. He's like, it seems like you're keeping busy. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I think I would recommend that you really take a moment, it could be 2 seconds, just to be really grateful that you weren't in this car. So why am I saying this? What you went through, you could get overly addicted to writing books or doing seminars and talks and distract yourself from really truly looking at this tree. Or you can say, you know what, Robert, appreciate this life because you just were close and you got a second chance. You see, two different people, how they respond. So,
well, most people, I'm reading a lot now about near-death experiences because it's quite a phenomenon since the 60s. It really, people never even talked about it until the 1960s. And there are tons of books about it. And it's really like what I'm going to be talking about in the last chapter. But most people who have near-death experiences kind of react the way I did, right? Sometimes it can be a very hellish experience, but the sensation, you're almost outside of your own body, right? And when oxygen is not going to your brain and strange things start happening, you see, this is something that I'm going to be writing about. We don't realize it, but the human brain creates the world that we perceive, right? Literally. You think you're seeing the world as it is, but that's not true. It's the brain creating it. It creates colors. It takes images that are all sharp and all hazy, and it creates sharpness. It creates objects. It creates borders around things. That's not how things actually are. An eagle or a dog or a cat, they don't see the same world that you see. It's something that our brains create. Our brains create a world for us. And when your brain breaks down, as in a near-death experience, and oxygen is cut off from reaching the brain, suddenly you're actually experiencing the world as it is, not as the brain filters it. And it's an ecstatic experience. It's complete ecstasy, because you realize that we see like a subject separated from an object. Like, I'm different from you. I have my own world. You have your world. But when things break down, you see that that's actually an illusion, that everything is really one. Now, that's a cliche, and I'm just putting words to it because it's a feeling. It's not things that go into words. But when you come close to death, it is an ecstatic experience. And I'm reading a book right now called Near-Death Experiences in the Ancient World. It talks about ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, India. And the idea is all of our concepts of heaven and hell and the afterlife really came from people who had near-death experiences. Now, it sounds a little bit ridiculous, and he argues it very well. But there's a definite connection between people's concept of an afterlife or what happens to us after we're dead to people who have near-death experiences. And mostly, it's a very positive experience. I mean, you can take, and the movies have been made about it, people who are miserable, who are the worst sons of bitches, who are unhappy, discontented, who hate everything. They have a near-death experience and it completely alters them.
That's so true. Sometimes that jolt can switch something. Who have been your best teachers?
Well, probably one of the biggest influences in my life is my sister. I'm very close to my sister. I love her very much. She's 4 years older than me. She's almost raised me in some ways, and she had a very big impact on me. And it was with her that we invented all these games and had all this fun, and we kind of created a separate world from our parents. So she played a very important role in my life. And but then I had a teacher when I was in high school, man named Russell Smith. I went to Palisades High School here in Los Angeles. And he was an English teacher. And I was maybe 15 years old, something like that, with my long hair. And I thought I was the greatest writer in the world. I thought I was such hot shit, you know? And I wrote this essay that I forget what it was about. And I thought it was really, really good. I was going to get an A on it. And I ended up getting a C. And there were all these red pencil marks over it. And the red pencil marks meant that you didn't do a very good job, right? Just seeing all that red made me go, oh, goddamn. And he basically explained to me, he said, Robert, writing is a form of communication. It's not about you expressing yourself. It's about communicating to other people. If you're just inside your own world and you're just writing things that excite you, it doesn't have any meaning. It's not good writing. It's egotistical. You're writing for other people. You're communicating an idea to others. So you have to like focus on that and not about how great you are and how, you know, just playing word games and such. And it changed forever the way I write. To this day, when I write a book, I'm not thinking about my clever ideas and word games. I'm going deeply into the reader and how they're going to experience this and how this could maybe change their way of looking at the world. So just that one little thing he taught me when I was 15 years old has forever changed the course of my life, and I'll never forget it.
I love that. You've worked, I read, more than 50 jobs.
Yeah.
Which one was the best one?
Well, I have to say, I was 21 years old. And I graduated college and I went to Paris. I was traveling all around Europe for like over a year, but I ended up in Paris. And I got a job in a hotel, the Hotel Saint-André des Arts. And it's in this beautiful Latin Quarter. I was the receptionist at the hotel. And it's where all the models stayed, the fashion models stayed. You know, I'm 21 years old. And the most beautiful women in the world are passing through every day. They're staying at the hotel. They're visiting the hotel. It was like I was like in a candy store or something. It was wonderful.
I'm sure.
You know. And I was in Paris, and I was learning the language, and I was interacting with all these great people, and I was young. That was probably the most exciting job I ever had.
That is a good job. And what was the worst one?
I knew you were going to ask. I was here in LA. I was maybe 30 years old or so. I just moved back here. And I got a job in Pasadena, I believe, at a detective agency. And I was what you call a skip tracer. And a skip tracer is, let's say somebody in Wisconsin jumped bail. They didn't pay, you know, they had bail money and then they just left. And they need to be found. The law needs to find them, right? So my job was using just the phone and never going out of the office, calling people, pretending to be somebody that I wasn't, and finding out where they were, right? And I was actually very good at it. So you call like the mother, you go, you know, yeah, I'm a buddy with Frank. We went to high school together. We were buddies. And you do some research and you know the places. You can name places that he went to. You could pretend like you were actually a friend. And you say, I'm trying to find out where he is. And she goes, and the mother will go, oh, I don't really know, but maybe this. Anyway, you go through this chain and you eventually find him. It was the most depressing job I've ever had in my life. I came home every day and I almost wanted to cry. I was like taking people and letting the law find them, and I was lying, and I was good at it. And I just felt really ugly about myself. I felt like this is not who I want to be. I had other jobs in Hollywood that were also really soul-sucking jobs that I hated as well. I'd say 90% of my jobs were awful. And that's why I wrote the 48 Laws of Power. So to pick which is the most awful is very difficult. I can easily pick the best one, but the most awful, there's too much to choose from.
And why do you do what you do? You know, you've done a lot and you're successful in how the world sees success. You're not as young as the 21-year-old in Paris. So you can say, you know what, I want to chill and I want to sit in my garden, but you still have this hunger, Robert, and the way even you're talking and you're working hard on this book and you're putting part of your soul still with an underline. So why do you do all of this?
It's a good question. Probably the answer isn't all positive. You know, sometimes what motivates you are kind of the demons that are inside of you, and you don't realize that. You think they're angels, but they're actually demons. So part of my problem was, growing up, was I never felt good about myself. I never felt like I was doing enough. I never felt like I was respected or loved enough. So you take that with you for your whole life. You never leave that behind. And it makes you always want to do more and more and more to please people, to get attention, to get that validation and that love that you never had. So part of my compulsion to continually work has a slight negative origin, I definitely believe. But on the other hand, my mind is so active that if I don't have something to put it onto, I get depressed and I start chewing on myself, consuming myself. So I was in that ambulance from the hospital going home. You know, I'd been a week in the hospital, and I'm in the back seat there, and my mind is going like this. Like 5 ideas for books were coming to me 7 days after my stroke. And I just realized if I don't keep working, I'm going to die inside. My body has been wrecked. You know, you saw how I walk, the left side of my body, but my mind is still active. If I don't write another book and I just live with my body the way it is, I'd probably be dead by now. I probably would have committed suicide. I need a purpose. I need a reason. Writing a book is that purpose. Now, I can tell you this, that once this book is finished, I'm not going to write another book like it. It was too draining. It took too long. I'm going to write something simpler and easier. This took 6 years. I'm going to write a book that'll take 1 year or 2 years. I can't physically do it anymore. You know, part of the problem is I can't type. So how do you write a book when you can't type? I have to handwrite everything, right? And then I have to dictate it into the computer. And then I have to edit it with one hand. It's very laborious. It's very difficult. It's very draining. Normally, I take a walk to clear my mind. I can't take a walk. I can't go for a swim. I'm trapped. So the process is very draining. And so I think I need a break. I can't write another book like that. I'm going to write a book about cats or about something very simple or easy.
Boredom, we said.
Huh?
We said boredom.
I'll write a book about boredom, yeah.
What is something that you do that you know is different than anyone else, how they do it? Like, what is something that you do that you know is different?
Well, I don't know if I'm the only one who does this, but it might be slightly OCD. You know what I mean by that? Okay. But like, I make a ritual out of everything, right? So I love rituals. So this is going to sound ridiculous. I'm confessing terrible things here. So I have like these shirts that I wear, right? And there's like 15 of them in the summer. They rotate exactly in a circle. So I know like this day, you know, like it changes each day. So I never wear the same shirt. I do the same thing with my shampoo, with my toothpaste, with my breakfasts. Everything is kind of rotated in these different rituals. And then some days I wake up and I go, wow, it's the day for this. How interesting. I don't know what that says about me, but I don't know if many other people quite have that kind of level of obsessive compulsive disorder. So I'm confessing something a little bit naughty about myself.
Thank you. It's nice to get some exclusive bits about you. It's interesting how even athletes, sometimes they'll tie their shoe before a game in a certain way.
Yeah.
Like it's something to do with our psychology. Maybe it's comforting.
Yeah.
That you don't have to think about something, or you feel this is my favorite socks, or some people wear this favorite boxers because they won so many games in them.
Yeah.
It's interesting how, we attach ourselves to these little rituals, even though maybe sometimes deep down, it's just like a thing, but it makes you feel better.
Well, also, when you have a little bit of this OCD or whatever you might want to call it, having too many choices is very paralyzing. So knowing that this is the day I have to wear this, this is the day that I use this shampoo, I don't have to decide, I don't have to think about it. So it gives life this kind of ease to it. It's not my decision. It's just the ritual. It's deciding what I do.
I read that you mentioned that you went through depression.
Yeah.
You had suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
And you were yet ambitious. So I don't know if they all came at the same phase, but that's how I read it. And I'm like, how interesting. Like there's depression, there's suicidal thoughts, and there's ambition. Like, were they all coinciding and coexisting at the same time?
Well, a lot of suicidal people were ambitious. In fact, because they were ambitious and they had no success, they felt very suicidal. They had very low self-esteem. So that's not all people who commit suicide, but a lot of very famous writers and artists have ended up committing suicide because they never felt like they were accomplishing what they wanted to. So, I've always been very ambitious. I'm a very competitive person. I don't like losing, even in games and such, right? So I'm in my 30s, and I know that there's something inside of me that could be interesting for the world to express. I know it deep inside. I've had these weird experiences, I have these weird thoughts. They could amount to something interesting, but I haven't been able to figure out how to do it. I try journalism, I try writing plays, I try writing novels, I try writing screenplays. It doesn't click. It's not who I am. It's not working. But I know I can do something great. And that sense of disappointment in yourself, of frustration, of knowing that you have potential but you can't realize it, was what made me feel deep down very, very depressed. And very much like, if I never find this, what is life worth? What is it? My work and creating something is so important to me that if I can't do it, I don't want to live. And so it was my ambition that actually drove me to feeling depressed and suicidal.
And how you got out of it, I could assume, is when you found the click? Or it's not as simple?
Well, I've been with the same woman for many years. My wife, I love her very deeply. She's a filmmaker. She's in Czechoslovakia right now making a film. She's been with me. She lived through all the years of my depression, and she knows about it. And she knows that she can say the moments where I went up and down and sunk very deeply. And so it wasn't like I was always every morning suicidal. I was young. I was doing things that I liked. I was excited, but it just kept sinking and sinking and sinking. And then you'd get up and then you'd sink again. And so how do I get out of this? And then I wrote, it was like 94 or so, I wrote some plays that we put on together here in Los Angeles. And that felt good. I felt like expressing myself. They were very weird plays that nobody understood, but it felt good. That kind of lifted me a little bit. And then a year later, I'm in Italy. An old friend from Berkeley, where I went to college, he's Dutch, and he's in Italy, and he's like helping to develop a new media school started by Benetton. And he wanted me to come over to help write the book that would launch this school. An absolutely ridiculous, scheme. Like, who writes a book to start a school, right? Already it seemed really dubious. but Italy. I mean, who's going to turn down a chance to go to Italy so naturally? I said, sure, yeah. And I go there, and it's a total fiasco. It's a total scam. It's just a place where people can eat good pasta and have espresso and argue and argue and argue, but nothing ever happens, right? So on the one hand, it's fun. I'm eating good food. I'm not in LA anymore. It's exciting, right? But on the other hand, it's kind of depressing because nothing is happening. It's just so political. It's so Machiavellian. And there's this other man there named Joost Elfers, a Dutchman, who's a friend of my friend. And he and I are both disenchanted. He's this older man. He's brilliant. He's a brilliant designer of books. And one day we're walking in Venice, Italy, along the quays of Italy in front of the Piazza San Marco, one of the most beautiful spots in the whole world. And he asked me out of the blue, he goes, Robert, do you have any idea for books? And suddenly that click that you mentioned clicks. And all of my agony, all of my depression, all of my frustration, it just suddenly came out of me almost like I was vomiting. And I told him this story about power, how everybody in the world wants power, but nobody wants to talk about it. This whole school that we're in, everybody's trying to act like it's so liberal, but it's all about power. And I tell him a story about Louis XIV and his finance minister, and how he threw the finance minister in prison for corruption, but in fact it was because he outshone the master, law number one. And that shows you how people's egos rule the world. And he goes, oh my God, that's fantastic, Robert, that's a book. And he said he would pay me to write while I first had to go home and write a treatment, and then if he sells the book, he'll pay me to write it. Everything changed because I realized that all of my negative experiences that I had accumulated over 38 years can now serve as grist for the mill, can now become the 48 laws of power. I don't know if you can understand that, but all my misery had a purpose. It had a purpose for writing the book that will reveal to the world the power games that people played, the power games that I had witnessed, the power games that I had been a victim of for so many years. And so it just turned around in one moment. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't be here talking to you if I didn't have that opportunity.
Can I edit a sentence that you just said? You said it all happened in one moment. It happened from listening to it happened a million moments before that. Not in one. You went through so many moments, but it looks if we really zoom out, it looks like that moment. But there's a whole thousands and millions of decisions and experiences you made for that moment to happen in Italy.
Yeah, I mean, what I often tell people is, if that had happened to me when I was 25, and I had the same thing, and they asked me for a book, it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have mattered. Nothing would have ever come of it. I was ready. It was my moment. I had been so beaten down that I was ready to do it. And I was so motivated. You know, we say, get rich or die trying. This was my get rich or die trying. Are they going to make this book work? Or that was the end of me. So the motivation was very deep. But yeah, it was an accumulation of thousands of moments that went into it.
I read also something about observations of masks. When was the first time you realized, Robert, that people wear masks?
Probably when I was about 3 or 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
I can't remember.
Like really young.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know for sure, but look, parents, so I'm growing up basically in the 1960s, well before you were even born, I imagine. Okay.
81.
Okay, there you're a kid. So I'm growing up in the 1960s, right? A different era. And parents then come from a different generation. They come from the Depression era and World War II, right? And so their whole world was out of the 1950s, which was lots of drinking and smoking and social events and having these parties and such. And I would be a child and I'd be looking at the world and I'd be going, they're all actors. They're all fake. They're all playing a game, you know? I can't say I intellectually thought that when I was 5 years old, but I know that was a deep part of my experience, is observing people and how fake they are and how they're always pretending and they're always laughing when they don't really feel it, and they're smiling, they don't feel it, and they're telling stories to kind of get rid of their pain. People have a lot of pain inside of them, but they try and mask it with a smile, with a laugh. You know, I'm not judging it. That's a good thing in some ways. But they're actors. Everyone is an actor. And looking at my parents and their parties revealed to me at a very early age that people are just acting, you know? Yeah. And I remember one time, I hope my mom wasn't hearing this. I was at Berkeley going to college, and that's my drug days, right? And I had taken some, I think it was LSD, and I got on the plane to go home to see my parents. And I arrive at their house, and I'm still kind of tripping, and they're having a party. I go, shit, man. I'm like tripping ahead in my brain, and I have to socialize with all these people. Like, I freaked out. But then I became like really talkative. And everyone said afterwards, my mom told me, they go, Robert, you finally came out of your shell. Everyone was saying how wonderful you were. They'd never seen you like that. They thought I was just suddenly, you know, blossoming, but it was really like the LSD. I was acting based because of this psychedelic drug that made people's faces look all weird and everything. You know, so a lot of dissociative experiences where I see people not as they are, but as what they pretend to be.
You know, I experienced it not as early as you, but in my later, maybe teenage years or young adult years, where I would, if I'm in a nightclub or at a lounge or at a restaurant and they're, you know, dancing in front of the table and sparkles everywhere, I like to observe people. I find it very interesting. So till today, I'll sit down and I'm like, you are really not enjoying yourself. Like, you can tell, because a lot of them are on their phones.
Wait, you're saying that about other people or about yourself?
No, I'm watching.
Oh.
I don't enjoy a lot of loud places, but whenever I am in one, especially these loud places where it's so distracting, it's a lot of drinking or music, and you're looking at them, you're like, are you even like having fun because you're on your phone?
Yeah.
And you're taking videos of yourself to tell people that, listen, I'm having fun, by the way. But if you're truly having fun, like really 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, you kind of forget to touch your phone. And they're like, oh, maybe you'll catch it for a moment. But it's weird. Like, I watch it and it's the mask thing or the act.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, we're having fun because we're supposed to be having fun if there's sparkles out of this champagne. And you're like, you have the wrong definitions of joy.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, are you a writer?
No.
You should be a writer. You have a writer's mind.
Really?
Yeah. You'd probably write a very interesting book. You should think
I
about it.
am doing one with a ghostwriter, but I'm good at speaking. And they would type what I say. But to actually write, I've never tried.
Well, you've got kind of a writer's mind, I can tell. You should think about it.
It's the first time I hear that.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'm wrong, but I think so.
Only if
I'm usually not wrong. But...
we try, we will know.
Okay.
I'm a trier.
Okay.
Can I get the red? Yeah. Okay, I have some red card questions. Red card questions, I usually would get maybe hypothetical questions, faster questions, some quotes.
You want me to keep my answers shorter?
No.
Okay.
No. I don't have that style in my interviews. You just speak as you want to speak.
Okay.
So the guy you mentioned is Joost Elfers, you said? Joost. Okay. Okay, so I had him here, so since you already explained who he was, you wrote some great books, such as The 48 Laws of Power, Mastery, The Laws of Human Nature, The Art of Seduction, and more. Why are some books banned in some U.S. prisons?
Well, the only book that's really banned, as far as I know, is The 48 Laws of Power. And I don't think it's banned in every single prison. Certain states have banned it. And I get emails Not so much anymore, but I used to get a lot of emails from prisoners who read the book, and they would tell me how much it helped them. So there's two sides of the story. It's kind of schizophrenic. From the prisoner's point of view, I've never been in prison, obviously, but I can put my mind, because I'm a writer, inside that world. And it's a very vicious world. And I've known prisoners. When I did the book with 50 Cent, one of his assistants had spent 20 years in prison for like a marijuana charge. In New York, they had these laws that if you broke laws 3 times, they threw the book at you. Really the nicest man. And he explained to me, but I read books about prisons because I'm very interested in it. It's a brutal environment in the United States in particular. There's nothing, it's the 48 laws of power in its purest form. All these psychological games, all this manipulation, all these games of domination that are going on among prisoners, with the wardens, with the people policing the prisons. It's an elaborate, pure game of power. And it's very brutal, it's very ruthless.
Right.
So they would tell me, the people who wrote me, because now I don't think they're allowed to write me, they would write and say, it calmed me down. I could see the games that were being played. I understood it on a higher level. I wasn't getting involved in this, that, or the other. It gave me perspective. Your book, they would say, and I'm not bragging, this is true stuff. Your book saved my life in prison. I have accumulated hundreds of these emails, these stories of people who said it literally saved them, okay? So from the prisoner's point of view, it's not being used to manipulate people. It's being used to kind of figure it out. Now, there probably were some prisoners who used it in the opposite way, and they obviously aren't going to write me about it. So a little bit of this is my perspective is a little bit slanted, because the people who would save are the ones motivated to write me, but there are a lot of them. But from the authorities' point of view, their game is control. They're controlling these people, not just physically, but psychologically, right? They want them to feel helpless. Because if you have prisoners who don't feel helpless, well, you're in trouble, right? And so from their point of view, this is a game that's teaching them how to survive well in prison. We don't want that. We want them to be terrified. We want them to be confused, right? So we better ban this book. There's a new trend in prisons, and it's a trend in the culture in general, I'm afraid to say, because as prisons go, so go the world. As Dostoevsky wrote, you can judge a culture by how it treats, by its prisons, right? So it's not just isolated to prisons, but there's a whole trend in prison life to curate what they can have intellectually, mentally, and creatively. So they can only see the most moronic TV shows, the ones that are like going to keep them in a state of arrested development. They're not supposed to watch like political shows with analysis. And the books used to be, the prison library for decades was the only place a prisoner could go for relief from the physical world, because you could read a book, it could take you outside of the prison, right? That is how Nelson Mandela developed himself. That is how Malcolm X developed himself. That's what Martin Luther King did for the few days he was in prison. The books, the library was their salvation, right? Well, now you can't just read any book. They curate the books for you. They give you their version of a Kindle, of an e-book, and you have 1,000 books you can read. But none of them are challenging. None of them are intellectually developed. They're all mindless, stuff, Harry Potter or whatever it is that they want to feed them. They're feeding them. They're controlling their minds. That's how the world that we're going to end up soon enough, at least in the United States, where they're going to be curating what we can read and what we can think. And so the 48 laws of power doesn't mix well with that kind of culture.
You said never outshine the master. Why?
Well, Anis, you have to realize in the world, you have to learn this the hard way, because most young people don't learn it quickly enough, or they never learn it. Everybody has an ego. Everybody you encounter has an ego. If you somehow trip on their ego, if you somehow violate their ego, if you somehow make them feel insecure, you're going to pay a price. And if you go through life not realizing that, you're going to accumulate people with all kinds of resentments. And at some point, they're going to act against you, right? So your boss who's above you, and everybody has a boss at some point, even you have a boss, somebody above you, right? Person financing your company or whatever. You would like to think, wow, they're so powerful. They're not insecure, right? They must be the, strongest person because they're the boss, right? But they're the most insecure of all because they're always wondering, do people really like me? Everybody smiles because I am the boss. They're all yes to yes, you're wonderful, you're great. But deep down, do they really like me? Do they really respect me? Right? The bosses, the people who have power, are the most insecure of all. They're always worried about whether people approve of them. They're always worried about who's after their job. If you somehow inadvertently make them feel insecure, you may make them feel like maybe you are more popular than they are. You make them feel that maybe you are more intelligent than they are. If you make them feel like you are more good looking than they are, you're going to trick that little insecure wire in their brain. And you're going to pay for it. You're going to be in a lot of pain. They're going to fire you. They're going to make your life miserable. They're never going to admit it's because you made them feel insecure. They'll say you did this, that, you're not performing well, you're not blah, 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 blah. But they're going to make your life miserable. So you don't want to outshine the master. You want to realize everybody has an ego, and you want to work with their egos and not work against them.
But Robert, can we say that some masters are more controlled with their ego and they're open to having smarter people and all of that, or am I not?
Of course, it's a generalization. And as all generalizations, there's a bit of falseness to it. Yeah, there's gradations. But even the most brilliant, humane, liberal, open-minded, wonderful, loving boss of them all has their insecurities. I'm sorry to say. It's a law. Some are worse at it. Some have much bigger egos than others. But everybody has an ego. And so even if they accept having smart people around them, and they're more open to being challenged, and they say, come on, everybody, I want you to tell me if my ideas are bad or stupid. And then you go ahead and you tell them that. They might accept it, but they might not. So be careful. Learn this law. It's a very important law. And even in the most open, liberal environment, it's a danger as well. It's always a danger. And it's not just your boss, it's your colleagues as well.
You also said, crush your enemy totally. Why?
All right. Well, this is a very misunderstood law.
So good. We can talk about it.
See, people nowadays are so impatient that they don't read books. They skim them, they get a little clip from it, they read the little paragraph, they see the title and they go, oh my God, crush your enemy totally. They don't goddamn read the fucking chapter. And what I explain in the chapter is, this is not about you as an individual facing your enemies and crushing them. It's like about businesses, it's about groups, it's about governments, it's about warfare, it's about politics. Okay? It's about Republicans versus the Democrats. It's about Google versus Microsoft, right? It's about Russia versus Ukraine. The dynamic in these competitive environments is you either win and demoralize the other side, or you're not going to win at all. You can't keep them around, okay? So people, oh my God, that's so cruel, Robert. You're so violent. You're so amoral, all right? I'm sorry, it just drives me crazy. It makes me so angry. What do you think goes on in the tech world? What do you think the reason why Google and Amazon and Meta and all the others are so powerful? They crushed every single enemy in their path completely. They obliterated them. I've given talks at Microsoft, and I know people who Microsoft. This guy invited me over there years ago to give a talk. He had started up his own startup in San Francisco. I don't know what it was about. What does Microsoft do? Their strategy? They buy the company. When they buy the company, they've crushed them. They no longer have a competition. Gobble, 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 gobble. Eat up every single competitor. That's what made Amazon the beast that it is. So don't come to me with your kind of whining about Crusher and tell how it's not the world, how it's evil. That is the law that governs the business world. I'm sorry to tell you, open your eyes. That is how the world operates. Don't be so naive.
Can we say that the jungle operates the same way?
The jungle? Which jungle?
Like a jungle with animals where a wild animal realizes there's another that's now disintegrating the power of the wolf pack or whatnot, and then they're not going to have two chefs in one kitchen. Does that make sense?
Well, there's predatory animals and there are animals that are prey. Predatory animals are all about territory and marking off their territory. And wolves, if there is another wolf invading their territory, they will kill it, right? It's their territory. So among predators, definitely that law pervades, yeah.
You said pose as a friend, work as a spy. You're getting annoyed with the quotes I'm bringing. But I think these quotes are good because we get to hear your side of them and a proper explanation rather than somebody just putting it on their Instagram story, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. You want to know what that means? Well,
Your elaboration, of course.
well, you know, so sometimes people, friends, aren't necessarily who you think they are. Each law has two sides to it, right? There's the side of the aggressor who's using that law against you, right? Amoral, whatever you want to call them, manipulative. And then there's you, perhaps you, the victim of their games, right? So half the purpose of the laws is to reveal to you what other people might be doing to you. So another law in the book that people talk about as being evil, which might be on your list, is get other people to do the work, but always take the credit. And in Hollywood, I was the victim of that. So I'm not just telling you go out and take credit for other people's work. People are doing that to you. So pose as a friend, work as a spy. If you're trying to gather information on people, on somebody that you don't like or somebody who's your competitor or your rival, if they know that you're a rival, they're going to be on their guard. They're going to be wary. They're going to be defensive. They're going to protect themselves. But if you lower their resistance, the power game is about lowering people, going around in the world. You're playing chess. You're lowering people's resistance so they don't defensive, so they don't know what you're up to. So they have no idea the game that you're playing. They think you're friendly. They think you're warm. They think you're a really nice guy. But deep down, you're playing this game, right? If they know you're playing the game, they're never going to fall for it. So 90% of the game of power is disguising all that. So if you're trying to gather information about power, about people, and what they're up to and their intentions, you have to lower their resistance. You have to become their friend. You have to get on their side. And then they won't suspect that you're actually secretly gathering information from them. And information, mind you, it's not just spying. It's not just stealing things from their drawers, secrets, right? It's observing them. So let's say I actually am your enemy right now, Hannes. I really don't want the good in you. I want to get something out of you, okay? Just we're pretending, okay? All right? So I become your friend. And we hang out, we're buddies, and we go to these restaurants in Dubai and everything. And then you start opening up and you start revealing to me some of your secrets, some of your weaknesses. I'm gathering information that I can now use against you, right? So that's what it's about. It's gathering information on people. But be wary of people who do that game to you. They might be playing that on you. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And just to summarize it to any listener, so your books are a huge form of awareness. Not only that you should do what I'm telling you it could be being done to you, so be aware, don't be naive.
Well, listen, people who are truly amoral, who are true power players, they don't need my book. They know it. It's in their DNA. It's in their fingers. They know how to play the game. In fact, they don't read books usually. They're the type that doesn't need to read books, right? And so the book is really for those who are naive, like I was. I'm not a great power player in the world because I never had any power until I was 39 years old and wrote the books. I was pretty low down on the scale, right? So I'm not writing it from the point of view of a Donald Trump or an Elon Musk. I'm writing it from the point of view of somebody very low down looking up. And so you need, people are too naive in this world, you know? Your parents don't tell you what the world is like. You enter the work world full of these ideals and these concepts, and they're not real. You don't understand how the world operates. It can be kind of brutal out there. Not always, but it can be. You're too naive. You're too trusting of people sometimes. I'm not telling you to be paranoid. I'm telling you to be a little bit aware and to be on your guard sometimes. This will not make you an ugly person. It will spare you a lot of unnecessary drama. So let's say you don't read Robert's book. You don't care. You don't think about people's egos. You inadvertently offend your boss when you think you're not. And now suddenly he or she is making your life hell, and then they fire you. And you're like, this has happened to me before I wrote the books. And you go home and you're miserable and you go, what happened there? I was doing a good job and now I'm fired? And it makes you confused and it makes you emotional and it makes you skittish and fearful of your next job. It can ruin your life. If you avoid that and you don't outshine the master and this doesn't happen, you've spared yourself 2 years of internal turmoil and drama and doubts about yourself.
Have you ever used the laws in your personal life?
Sure. Of course. I wouldn't have written the book if I hadn't.
When was the first time you felt powerless?
Well, I think in childhood, children are pretty helpless, and me feeling somewhat neglected and feeling like I have to fend my way in this world, I felt pretty powerless. And that's why I retreated into my own world. I invented all of these games. A lot of them had to do with sports and warfare, which were my two passions as a child, right? I had army men and I invented these war games. And I loved baseball and football. I'm American, I can't help it. I invented these very elaborate games. When I entered these worlds, it was my world. Nobody else lived there. Nobody else could enter it. Nobody else could bother me. I had control. I had power. And so I used my powerlessness to create my own worlds where I was sort of in control.
And what does power mean to you today?
Power to me today is freedom. It's the freedom for me. You're asking me personally?
Yes.
I don't have a boss. I don't have anybody censoring me. I don't have anybody telling me what kind of books I have to write. I can write what I want. My editor, basically gives me carte blanche. I have so much freedom, it's scary. And I appreciate it and I understand, because for those 38 years, I had no freedom. I had no power. I know what it's like on the other side. So I'm not callous. I understand that I'm very privileged, that I'm unusual that way. But damn it, man, I have so much freedom. It's such a blessing. I can write this chapter now that I'm writing. I don't have to worry about what I say. I can be as brutal as I want to be about what's going on in the world. It's insane. And then, I'm sorry, it's kind of hard for me to not be emotional about it, but I have had a lot of impact on other people, right? And that's probably the most satisfying thing in the world, because I don't really write books for myself or for my ego. I know I'm sounding like I'm trying to promote myself, but it's true. I write it for other people. I write it with trying to help them, seriously, because I could have written books in a year or 2 years that made a lot of money, that had kind of a gimmick behind them and sold well, but they wouldn't have been good. They wouldn't have really done what I wanted. I've taken a lot of time, and I ruined myself physically to the point where I had a stroke because I really, really, truly want to help people in this world that could be so brutal. And so to get feedback from readers saying the books really, really helped me is a feeling of the most powerful feeling of all. Occasionally it's the opposite, saying you ruined my life. You know, my spouse, my partner, my boss read your book and they screwed me. Not very often, but mostly it's like, man, you saved me so much. You helped me build my business. If it weren't for your book, this wouldn't, blah, 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 would have happened. So that's the kind of power I feel now. And it's very satisfying. I don't take it for granted.
Did you end up writing the book that a young Robert needed?
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I mean, so put yourself in my shoes. I'm like 22 years old. I graduated college, you know, with a degree in classics. You know, my head's in Homer and Thucydides and Shakespeare. And then I'm thrust, after I came back from Paris, into the world of New York. I live in New York, journalism, Esquire magazine. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing all these people walking around. They're like actors. They've got these egos. They're all playing these power games. They're like courtiers in the court of Louis XIV, all flattering these other writers, the editors, etc. It's this game going on. I don't understand what's happening. I get very emotional. I get very confused. I get very upset. I take it personally. The book would have really might help me. Yeah, I think that's very much the case. Yeah.
Mm. What does seduction mean to you? Because you wrote a book about seduction.
Well, it's not a book. It's not a pickup artist book. Let's make that clear. It's not a book for guys who want to go pick up women really quickly and easily, because it's more elaborate than that. It's also a book that's for women seducing men, because I make the point in the book that seduction is a form of power that women invented. It was the only form of power that they had in the ancient world. It was the power of a courtesan, was the power of Cleopatra or Helen of Troy or whomever. Okay, so seduction is not about getting quick sex or anything like that. It's a psychological process of making other people lower their resistance, lower their walls, and open themselves up to you. And when they open themselves up to you, you can make them fall in love with you. You can make them do what you want. You can manipulate them. Or yes, you can start a relationship. You can have love. Or yes, you can win a political campaign. Kennedy's campaign in 1960 against Nixon was a classic game of seduction, right? Or in your marketing campaigns, you're seducing the public. Or as an artist, trying to win an audience as like a 50 Cent or a filmmaker, you're seducing the public. If you hit people directly in the face, if you use the hard approach and hit them like people do in advertising like they used to do, people get defensive. But if you attack from the side, if you lower their resistance, they open themselves up to your ideas, you can seduce them. So what interested me was the large psychological picture of seduction. What ties together a political, a marketing, a social, and a sexual seduction? What is the psychological process that connects all of these forms together? And that's what I tried to describe in the book.
Do you regret writing any of your books?
Well, as Edith Piaf once sang, moi je ne regrette rien, which means I don't regret anything. What is the point of regret? Can you tell me what the point is?
I know that, some people enjoy regret because their ego is attached to feeling sorry for themselves.
Yeah.
But it's quite a waste of time.
The past is the past. If you want to learn from the past, if you said, I did something wrong, I hurt somebody, all right, I won't do it again. But what's the point of regretting it? Yeah, you're right, it's for their ego. So I've had a lot of tough things. I've made mistakes. I don't regret any of them. I outshone the master and got fired twice. Painful experiences. But if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't have been able to write law number 1 of the 48 Laws of Power. I don't regret anything. And I'm serious about that. Or sincere about that.
What does love mean to you?
Well, one of the chapters in the Sublime book is about love. I call Love Sublime.
Okay.
And now love, I'm somebody who loves animals. I've always had dogs and cats in my life. And I'm not putting her in second place behind this. And I have a wife, a girlfriend and wife, right? And so to me, the feeling is of losing yourself in this other being. So the title of that particular chapter is Escape the Prison of the Ego, Love Sublime. So you're trapped inside of your ego. You're trapped inside of your own walls. You're defensive. You have your own experiences. You have your own world. And it can get oppressive. You can feel like you're in a prison. The same thoughts over and over again, the same worries, the same concerns. It's boring. It's banal. Other people draw you out of that world. And when you love someone, you're slowly, slowly dissolving all of those ego barriers. You're entering their world and you have a sense of oneness with their other being, right? And you can have that with